everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. We're going to call a joint meeting of the Carson City Board of Supervisors and the Carson City School District Board of Trustees to order. We've already done a roll call for the Board of Supervisors today. And
we have all members present except Member Green.
Okay. And we have the flag salutes is for Supervisor Bagwell. Lori is getting a prestigious award in Washington, D.C. from the Daughters of the American Revolution. So she is probably getting on a plane about right now. So that's why she's not here. So if you'll please join me with the salute to our flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, anybody have any questions about the agenda? Board, school board, anybody? All right, Ron, can we say then, since there's no objection, we'll take the agenda as published. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay with everybody?
Yep.
No objections? All right. Now's the time for public comment. Anybody want to comment on anything that's not going to be talked about? You can talk. We'll have public comment now and at the end. Anybody? Silence.
Been a long day.
Well, it has. So that's all right. You know what? That's what we all get paid the big bucks for. All right. Ron, you want to start off with welcome remarks?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I know that Karen and myself, this is probably going to be our last meeting of a joint meeting. I wanted to express my appreciation to you individually as board members for what's happened over the last 8 years. And last time we met, I talked about all the things that have happened. And again, the most important thing is that with our students, we've actively connected learning beyond the classroom, and that's because of a commitment of our business partners and other cultural organizations, including the library. I mean, things have taken on a life of its own over the last 8 years in terms of helping our students. And when we help our students, they're successful and we're all successful. But the one thing I wanted to take some time to follow up on from the last meeting was what you as a board have done in the area of the arts. I'm still amazed, and since that meeting, I've been out and I look, and whether it's the literary arts, the performing arts, or the visual arts, what's happening in the city is creating an environment. I know it's for all of the city, but what's happened is the fallout for our students. I talked a little bit with Mark Salinas, and I look at this in just amazement. And let me just read you something. I took down some notes of something that I read here recently. About the arts. And it says, the arts are, as best I can remember, the arts are an essential part of what makes us human. One element of the arts is the ability to imagine another reality apart from the one we are living. And we think about our community. We've got over 60% of our kids on free or reduced lunch. And they need the arts as a way to imagine there is another reality. And this goes on, as best I can recall, children already living in a narrowed world need more access to the arts, not less. And you as a board, and I thank you individually, what you provided is an environment for these kids to have access more to the arts, to not only participate in the arts, but hear the arts of what they can do. And with all of what we have done, together, I can sum it up that together we're actually preparing our students, our children in this community to be successful now and in a time that we're not going to see. We have provided that environment which is something that I think is very special. So with that, Mayor, I just wanted to say that and thank you as a board and individually for taking the steps to make things happen.
You know, we all of us in this room, and I'm saying all of us in this room, do things for the benefit of our community. And we live in a community where people really do care about others and care about building a community we can have pride in, building a community where, families feel comfortable raising their kids, feel comfortable having, their school system's going to do well. And, what I've learned over the years I've been mayor is that successful, sustainable communities are really those communities that understand and promote, one, education, and I'll say it in all forms, education in all forms, for their community, and also, builds an infrastructure where people feel comfortable raising their kids and just living a good life. And we have those tools here in Carson City, and it's not just we have a great board. I'm not counting myself on that one, but we have a great board that looks down the road. And I'll just mention it. I was just chatting with Brad and Karen here before the meeting. And we have folks in Carson City who, after all these years have acquired Jack's Bar. And that's our local folks doing that. Those are big things. I mean, that's somebody stepping up to make sure, that we're correcting our eyesores and we're doing what we can to make our city a beautiful place for all of us to live, work, and play, and where the seat of government, the state government, can be proud that they're here. And so, my message tonight is I'm just real proud to be a member of Carson City community, and I think these joint meetings show, that the communities that work together and are on the same wavelength towards what we need to do for an infrastructure, what we need to do for our kids and our families. Those are the successful communities, and so that's my 2 cents tonight. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. You want to take over now?
Give me this thing.
Let the record reflect he grabbed it. He grabbed it.
He's in charge.
Okay, we're moving on to agenda item number 5, presentation on current development trends and growth management projections for Carson City. Is for discussion only. Lee Plummer.
Good evening, Lee Plummer, Carson City Community Development Director. If it's okay, I'll join you up here since
Please.
this has been control the laptop here. So we usually give an update on development in the community on an annual basis. So we'll be doing that this year. But I also thought that with the timing of this, I'd take the opportunity to inform the school board a bit about the city's growth management program. And the timing-wise, it works good. The Planning Commission has made a recommendation last month. The Board of Supervisors is going to be taking action on this in July. There's going to be somewhat of a preview of information for the Board of Supervisors, but I think this is an opportunity for you as school board members to provide some comments and have some discussion with the City Board of Supervisors on how we manage growth going forward in the future, because certainly that has an impact on the school district. So just a little, and I'm going to go through a presentation that has the graphs that are in your presentation and going through it, and feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions on any of them. Just a little bit of background. So we do have a growth management program in Carson City, which one of the things it's required to do is to consider these various services in establishing the number of residential units every year. One of which is school enrollment and capacity as a consideration that the city must consider in establishing these numbers each year. Those things that they take action on include the first bullet there, which is the maximum number of residential permits for the following year. They also talk about the distribution of those allocations and water, but I think kind of the primary focus for this discussion, and as it relates to impacts to the school district, is certainly the residential component of it. So moving on to what that is, this is the complete history of growth management, with the top line there being the number of allocations that have been allowed in any given year, and the bottom line being the number actually obtained or issued that have gone out. the number of allocations available every year. There's been various methodology through the years, you can see, but it's always been roughly as a policy based on allowing a maximum of 3% growth in any given year. The program's not really, it's not an effort to predict how much growth is going to be in the next year, but it's looking at capacities. If we have this many units in the next year, can we provide continue to provide adequate services to the community at those levels? And it's also something that's looked at every year. So it's not that we have to allow that certain amount of growth every year, but as a policy, that's, as you can see, the line's been pretty steady over the last couple of decades. That's what it's been. Certainly, you can see during the recession, a very low number. I have some lines there with some historic trends over the long term of where our numbers of residential units per year have been in the past over other time periods. And we're even in the last couple of years, even to our surprise, I think last year we probably told you we expected more units than we had in 2017. But 2018 is on target to be a year where we do probably get above that 30-year average line for the first time in over a decade. This is just another graph in there, shows the distribution between the types of residences that we see, with the yellow being the two big categories there, the yellow being single-family detached product, that top checked bar being multifamily. There's some other ones in between there. Just to note, historically, looking at Carson City's current makeup, and I know Mr. Fueling is working on this, looking at the different types of products from which different school-age kids come out of, but we currently citywide, it's about 35 to under 40% of the total current product in Carson City is some sort of attached product. And consistently since about 2000, that's still about the same percentage that we continue to see permits coming on, which has an effect on the number of children that come out of those different types of products. We're presently doing a capacity analysis for both residential, and we're doing a water analysis that includes residential and commercial that we anticipate to be completed by July. This slide that's up there and is in your packet shows, I think as I get to the next slide, our master plan build-out population for our residential land use is approximately 75 to 80,000. And doing a quick, just the land use analysis of our, back to the first graph on the left there, that's about 8,400 more residential units in Carson City to get to that population on top of the 23,600 that we already have. In an analysis looking at our lands that are designated residential in our master plan and assuming a maximum density build out, we're still below that capacity. So there's still some capacity, at least in terms of our water capacity and other capacities within the city, to develop that many units and still stay within what our capacity within that 75,000 to 80,000 level. I think it's going to be an interesting analysis with the water, putting a usage. We're going to have information on the usage per residential unit, usage per various commercial units. So that's going to assist us in looking at future land use decisions too, of transitioning commercial properties to residential, and do we have the capacities to do that? So we're looking forward to having that, and at some future meeting we'll be bringing that to the Planning Commission Board of Supervisors, and we'll have that available to the public in the future. So what does that look? Here's what that looks like in terms of a population projection. And again, this is, if we could accurately predict it, we would all love that, to know exactly what's going to happen in the next few years. But so what we've started doing is providing a range with our city's estimated high and low, representing an average long-term growth rate of between 0.7 and 1.3% approximately there. The demographer every couple of years gives us a projection, which is that black line up on the screen there. The most recent one is a little bit more bullish on our potential growth, so we're planning conservatively, but I think, with what we have going on, he's looking at other factors. I think with what we have going on now, we can see a little bit higher growth than what the demographer is projecting at this time. Just a couple more pieces of information here for you before I get to the end. This one's housing cost. Not going to come to any conclusions based on this, other than I think something we all know is that housing prices or cost of a single-family home's going up. That affects, again, I think that does relate to the families, the type of family, the type of households that are buying houses and moving into the area. This chart goes back through 2017, and I think we could safely say the median household single-family price continues to go up. I've included this in there based on information from the school district. Again, just historic enrollment in the school district with elementary, middle, and high school populations on top there, and taking many factors into consideration, projected population growth, which, in looking at the total population, that growth. One way to look at it, doesn't look like much, but that's a lot of number of students, because that's between 7,000 and 8,000. So we are talking hundreds of students, I believe, there in the projection in the next few years. And in the report, I've talked about the number of units that are so-called approved right now, that have some level of approval. There will be other projects built in the next couple years that don't include those. Some of these will take longer. But what I did for the Planning Commission, and I've included here, is to put the location of where that development's occurring on the school district boundary map. Particularly, I think this is the elementary school district boundary map that I pulled off the website. So you can see where there will likely be some growth pressure in the near future and over the next few years. So I just wanted to point out a couple other things. This was mainly for the Board of Supervisors. I mentioned the land use capacity analysis. I think that's going to be a good tool. The other thing I have up here is fire and streets impact fees that are going to be considered by the Board of Supervisors in 2018. We'll see where that goes. I left it in here for this discussion because I wanted to point out that school district impact fees are not allowed in Carson City. So by NRS, by our population threshold, we are precluded from adopting impact fees for schools in Carson City. And to change that would need to go to the state legislature. In fact, there was a bill last year with a population threshold in there that would have put Carson City in that range where we could do that, but that failed. And finally, I think one of the best ways for the school district to see, we could look at these long-range things, but we also have a monthly planning report. So really, when things are coming, we have big projects, apartment projects or other subdivisions. It's on the monthly report that they're going under construction. So I think in the shorter term, that's the place to look to see what's coming up within the next year. And so we prepare that. It's called the Community Development Monthly Report. It's on the website. It's actually under that website. It's also under the news heading on the city's main site. And so you could always see what the latest residential and commercial development that's going on in the community is. So with that, I will take questions. I also encourage you, if you have any questions on growth management or comments for the City Board of Supervisors, that this is probably a good time to do it. Thank you.
Questions from respective board members? Laurel?
Yes, I have a question, Lee. That NRS that prohibits Carson City based on population threshold from collecting school use fees, is that the same NRS? Because Washoe County recently did the question to raise sales tax just for school building and funds that way. And I remember AJ telling us that there was something in the statute that prohibited Carson City based on either size or something from doing that. Is that the same one that I'm Thank you, Deb.
It is, and so I think Washoe County got around that statute by the ballot question. So by approval of the ballot question, I think per NRS, they can't do it, but the ballot, if I remember correctly, the ballot question is what allows them to do it.
Okay. My understanding from AJ was that our population was too small.
Ours is too small,
to
right. It
even
is
get it to the
it is the
ballot
larger
question.
population that
Okay.
allows that, yes.
Yeah, you know, I have one. And we talked about, or you talked about earlier, the 3% growth rate. When I was on the Board of Supervisors many years ago, I mean, we stayed pretty close to that. And then we went into that downturn. Student population was going up, and then we hit the mid-2000s, and things went south. And that was a lot because of cost of housing. People were moving to Lyon County, Douglas County, Story County, Washoe County. So my question would be, and you showed the numbers here, we haven't gotten anywhere near that 3% growth rate as far as permits issued and actually, building out. If people that did leave Carson during this time for more affordable housing now find it okay to move back, that's a concern of mine. And have you taken a look at the total employment numbers of people who work in Carson but live in other counties? And I say that because of what we've done jointly here in the city. A lot of people may want to move back with their kids because of the Carson City School District and what's happening in our community as a whole. So that's a question. How many people are employed but live out of the Carson City area?
I don't have an answer for you tonight on that, but that's something I can get and can include, because I know I forget what state agency it has, but there's employment numbers that have tables for the number of people and between all counties in Nevada. And if you think that's something that's useful, I can get it for you and forward it to you. And as well, I think that's probably some good information to include in the future.
Yeah, I think it's important because of the pre-early 2000s and the number of people that moved out and the number that may want to move back in, because they're employed here and the schools are something a little bit better than maybe in the surrounding county. And I'm not taking away from the surrounding counties, but that perception of Carson City being that unique a place where they'd want their kids.
And I think as I was going to try to look at the population, as that population shows, that sort of thing can affect the population. Who lives here, how many students and everything. Our population went down because of employment, not because we weren't building houses. We were still building houses. We still had the same number of houses before. So I think what you're saying is right. We could have a surge of that employment coming back. So regardless of the number of houses, there could be an unusual surge in the population. Yeah.
Richard, I forgot, does the school district have its own bill draft request ability?
We do, and we're currently working on a similar idea with Mr. Al Kramer. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, additional questions, comments? See none. Lee, thank you very much. We'll be back in touch.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Okay, agenda. Okay, agenda item number 6. Presentation by the Carson City Library on youth internships and professional skill development offerings available through the Carson City Library and the Adams Hub for Innovation. I see now you've changed, but so just say your name for the record.
For the record, Valerie Quape, Business Development Manager at the Adams Hub. And Diane Baker, the Department Business Manager at the Carson City Library.
So Sina was not able to join us tonight, so she has sent us in her place. I promise we're going to try to keep this short and sweet because we know that many people here have had a long day already. So Diane's pulling that up. All right, so today we're going to be talking about different youth development opportunities that we have both at the Adams Hub itself, Adams Hub for Innovation, which is now under the umbrella of the Carson City Library, as well as the Carson City Library itself. First, we're going to talk about internship opportunities that we have at each site, and then we're going to talk about some of the other professional skill development opportunities that we also have. Okay, so at the Adams Hub, we currently are housing 2 Carson High School interns. Between the two of them, they're working about 10 hours per week total. Some of our future plans are to partner more strongly with the Carson City School District programs, with particularly Yeti, with the work-based learning program and CTE, and make sure that we're able to tie in those skills, particularly from the business classes, and offer those students more opportunities to have offer those students opportunities to work directly with not only entrepreneurs, but in an entrepreneurial environment. We are also going to be looking at ways that we can recruit college interns. We have previously had interns from UNR. I'd like to bring that program back and continue it. I'd also like to strengthen our relationship with WNC and give our local students also an opportunity to work in an entrepreneurial environment and gain some of those skills.
Okay, we're splitting this session. So for the Carson City Library, we have a good, robust, long-term program with the Carson High School to have 2 interns that work in what we call our digitorium. And they are, it's approximately 2 hours a week. We have just finished the initial recruitment. Interviews are going to be underway for the next school year, and we're pretty excited about some of the candidates that have come in. In continuing our partnership with the school district, we have had great pleasure in working with Yeti, who is new on the school staff. And we're looking to partner to have a career library, and support the one at the high school, and also have an extension for students in the digitorium. And then, of course, continuing the PSA program that has been going strong for many years, and we're really looking forward to seeing the students again this fall and getting that going. So this is what went out that Yeti helped us with, and the school district, to get the word out about the partnership at the school district, with the Carson Library through the school district. And like I said, we have some nice candidates. Looking forward to that. Continuing with the high school students as a whole, we have the Teen Leadership Council that we draw directly with the school district, try to draw in students from there in several different ways, and supporting their learning efforts with, of course, continuing tutor.com, the digitorium efforts with the digital literacy skills that are trained there, and then kind of split this one, the Adams Hub, with the new e-network, and turn it.
So the new e-network is an opportunity for Carson, I believe it's specifically Carson High School students, to get more of an opportunity to learn hands-on new entrepreneurial skills. So that's what New E stands for, is New Entrepreneurs. And that is headed up by, right now, Molly Dahl, who is contracting with us for future programming, and she was able to revise that curriculum and make it something that would work really nicely with Carson's program. So moving forward, we want to continue with our internships, and as we discussed, also strengthen that quite a bit and look at different layers. We also want to explore different external partnerships that we can have to maybe bring in other opportunities or network other internship opportunities. So for example, if someone comes to us and they're looking for an internship and maybe we don't have something that would fit what they're looking for, or maybe we don't have one available, making sure that we can have that network to connect those people two other opportunities in the community, and maybe vice versa. And then also looking at more internal educational opportunities, so building up workshops and opportunities for our current interns and future interns to get more experience. So for example, making sure that they're able to attend events, making sure that they're able to attend workshops and have access and exposure to those, and that information. And that is it. Up there you will find my contact information, Diane's, as well as Yeti or Urania? Is that, okay. And also, I can't read it, Jen, who is with the Carson City Library as well.
So if you have any questions, comments, please, we're ready for them.
I have a comment. I could make one. I would encourage you to touch base with Nevada Works. They have a network of employers that attend those meetings regularly that are begging for youth training for particular jobs. And so I think it would be advantageous to have a method to the madness in terms of what we're training them for in the area.
Thank you.
Okay.
While we're doing the referrals, I'd like to introduce you to Myrtle Gotham, who's the Vice President of Research and Innovation at UNR, who will help you with reaching out from that side of the education community. Will also help with your liaison and work with WNC. So you and I both keep that on the burner and we'll get it done, okay?
Fantastic, thank you.
Well, I'll just make a couple of comments. Since I've been on the school board, or even before, I just can't say enough good things about what you've done at the library. Going back to Sarah Jones, Tammy Westergaard, and just coming forward, it's been amazing. It's been a real innovative, public innovative learning center for a lot of people. Now, the one thing, maybe you could give me a little more explanation, or maybe on the board. The Adams Hub, how is that functionally working? And I'll tell you why. The Adams Hub, as far as the school district, has been just a staunch supporter, and actually changed our whole business curriculum from business to an entrepreneurial program. And with our teacher Billy McHenry, it's been amazing. And I attended some of the early sessions with Maya McKenzie and Jeff Glass on the New E program. And it was a now type situation. It reflected the diversity of our school population, but the students took something away from it now. It wasn't a day from now. It took, at that moment, they were able to take something away from the program. And I'm talking about the Adams Hub in setting this up. Now, functionally, you said, like Molly Y'all is now still taking this, and is it in the middle schools? You said the high schools, but is it in the middle schools? And then secondly, how does it work? I mean, we were so excited when, the Adams Hub was by itself as a partner, and now it's probably going to be equally as good, but explain a little bit more. What's changed?
So, speaking to our connection with the school district, previously, my understanding is that the only programming that we had for youth was the New E Network and then these internships, which were not necessarily directly connected with the school district itself. It's more of an internship with also a part-time job, and they have opportunities to learn as they go. So we're looking to tighten that up a little bit more moving forward. Our connection with Yeti will help us bring in some of those learning opportunities at an age-appropriate level to the middle school level. We're not sure what that's going to look like yet, but we're excited about it. We've really had some very preliminary discussions and kind of talking about the general directions of both programs and how we can network things together. So sit tight. There will be more coming on that front. As far as, I'm sorry, so what was your second question?
Just operationally, what's really changed with it going under the jurisdiction of the library? It's public and not private now.
Perfect. So that is correct. So it was previously under the umbrella of the Hopp and May Adams Foundation, and thus more of a private entity. Now that we're a city organization, obviously we're public. I think after having a lot of partner meetings and discussing with not only representatives from other business organizations in the city, talking to our clients, talking to people we are hoping to partner with, what we really need to do is, as the board suggested during the approval of the grant, is we need to focus a little bit more on workforce development and skill development to ensure that we have a skilled workforce in this community that can move forward and have those competitive entrepreneurial skills and also business skills. So we're going to be I'm in the process of meeting with different organizations that already have programs in place that they can bring into the Adams Hub to offer our community members and our clients. So things like how to write a business plan, what is a startup, how do you fund your startup, and then I also want to bring in presentation skills, how to just even more preliminary than having a pitch fest. So how do you do a PowerPoint presentation, then have the pitch fest. So the things like that, taking those baby intermediary steps, moving forward into the more entrepreneurial aspect of it.
Will it still serve as an incubator type for outside businesses? You're still in the same location, but that same function will continue?
Correct. So what we're planning to do at the moment is scale our incubation activities back a little bit, and instead of having a rolling incubation enrollment, have more of a cohort approach where we have a structured program for our incubated clients, because they would be receiving services at a discounted rate, making sure that they are actually moving forward with their business and meeting certain metrics along the way. And if after one or two chances and they aren't meeting metrics, then unfortunately they are not able to move forward in the program. But then we also have an endpoint where they graduate from the program, and that is one of our performance metrics as well.
And I do want to clarify that the hub does remain a business incubator. It's not a library branch. It is its own separate program, and operationally it will still function as a business incubator, pre-accelerator, with the additional programs that we've been talking about, our integration and expanding the integration with the school district and in the community where appropriate. Does that help?
Okay, additional questions? Brad?
Yeah, I'd like to point out, too, that the funding for the programming is still coming from the Hop and May Adams Foundation.
That is correct.
Well, it's an opportunity for the library to become even more amazing, so we look forward to getting the next report. So without any additional comments, any comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your presentation. Sorry, Mr.
Hi, thank you for having us. I actually brought a couple additional people with me. This is our Deputy Chief, Linda Lawler. She will be discussing the services that we offer on the probation side of things for out-of-custody youth. And I also brought with me Ryan Felix, who is our detention manager, to discuss the services that we provide for the youth that are in custody, as well as the partnership we have with the school in regards to education that's going on in our facility.
Linda Lawler, Juvenile Services, thank you for having us. I think one of our priorities is diversion, and in order to do that, we have to offer programs and services to the community for youth that aren't in the juvenile justice system. And the best way to do that is to partner with the school district. And I'm happy to say they're great partners, and we are always excited to do more with the school district and hope that what we do offer, they take advantage of, and we can create more programs that we can do with the school district. But what we do have implemented currently, we do have a representative that is a member of the SARB committee. And we do offer our expertise when it's appropriate during those hearings, and we offer our community service program when kids are issued community service through the SARB. 2 years ago, we started implementing Play by the Rules, and we went into Carson Middle School. They were great partners. We entered the school during the Encore class for the 6th graders, and Play by the Rules is a program that focuses on Nevada law, specifically for juveniles, and the way it's structured so that they're educated on what pertains to them and how our system's set up, so that when they're faced with certain situation, they can make good decisions and they're educated. It's actually a great program, and Ryan will talk a little bit more because we started implementing that in detention. It's difficult to go into the school during school hours because the kids need their education. So we have expressed to the schools that if they have a select group of kids that they feel are maybe on the verge of kind of going sideways, they can call us and we can come in and implement this program along with some of the other programs I'll talk about. We just started working with Seeliger Elementary School. One of our newest programs is called Arise, and it is a program that teaches life skills, and it focuses on younger kids and middle school age kids and even teenagers, and it is actually a great program. We worked with, I believe, about 7 or 8 elementary school age kids that were a problem at Seeliger, a lot of anger management skills, and I attended 2 of the sessions with the probation officer that is facilitating that program, and these were pretty difficult youth. And one of the things that really impressed me is after that was completed, they were really happy about graduating the program. I went to the graduation, and all the kids had to stand up and talk about what they learned in the program, and I was really impressed with what they had to say. In fact, at the Cops and Kids program, one of the kids came up to our booth, and his grandfather was with him and expressed to us that he was really impressed with that program and that his grandson came home and talked about what he learned with that program. So I'm pleased with that, and that's a newer program that I really hope to kind of get across for the schools to invite us in to work with these kids, because one of the biggest things is we don't want to see them in our department, and if we can avoid that, then it's a success. We also facilitate Parent Project. We have 4 of our officers that are facilitators, and we welcome referrals outside of our probation family. And I know there's a lot of people in our community that are now facilitators, but haven't set that up yet. But we have it running 2-3 times a year, and we are always welcome for referrals outside of probation. We also have an alcohol, drug, and education class that we have worked with Carson High School, and basically, if they have a student that has a drug issue, first time on campus issue, one way to reduce that suspension, they'll contact us and we will put them through this 4-hour class that we contract with Community Counseling Center, and they have one of their drug and alcohol counselors come in and teach an education class. And the parents are required to attend the first 2 hours of this class. And so if the kids come and they complete it, we notify the school and their suspension is reduced. And so that is something that we're always welcome for those referrals to help out. And lastly, I'm going to talk about our JAS program, which is our mental health diversion program. And so this is a program that's, its success really is dependent on everybody's input. And so when we have a kid that enters our JAS program, we do contact the school, we do contact the Safe School professional and try to work with them and get them involved in our program, and that's really been a success. We have monthly meetings with the providers that are working with that youth, and we have a good turnout with the Safe School professionals and even some of the deans coming into these meetings to discuss the child's progress. So if we need to change that treatment plan, we can do that with those meetings. One of the things that some of the Safe School professionals has asked is, can this program be available to kids that are not on probation or that don't have a referral with juvenile services? And that's something that we haven't figured out how to do There's a piece to it that we have to work with the district attorney's office to see if that's possible, but that is something that's on our radar, and, we are seeking if that's a way, if we can do that. But first-time offenders with maybe disturbance of school, those are some of the kids that we can work with, that have that mental health component, and work with the school to hopefully keep them from, reoffending and coming into the juvenile justice system. Those are some of the programs that we offer for the kids not in custody, and I'll let Ryan talk about our education program in detention.
Okay, before you go on, how many in this class program with the mental health part of it, how many kids are in that program?
So we had put a cap of 22, and I think right now we have 10 kids in the program.
Linda, I'm just wondering, was it JASS?
So it's JAST, and it's Juvenile Assessment Screening Triage Team. And so we partner with a mental health professional to create a case plan, and they work with us to ensure that that case plan is being followed accurately. Yep.
Are you still doing the entrepreneurial program for?
We are. We do. We still do that with Jeff.
Okay, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So we work with Jeff Glass, and he does the entrepreneur class. And so that has been a real success with our program. Basically, Jeff is an expert in that field, and he works with the kids, and they have a graduation, and he's created a company that he has hired a few of our kids to work in that company, and we get great feedback. It's really, it's more than being an owner of a business. He teaches them skills that I think can go beyond owning a business. It's just personal skills, how to talk to people, integrity. What he teaches those kids is amazing. And that is something that we continue to work with Jeff. We have an ongoing contract with him, and that's a program that we also offer. And in reality, that is something that we can offer to kids that are not on probation too. We haven't, in the history, because the school district also has that program, so that's not something that we've done. But if there is a referral out there, we will accept them.
I just have one last question on that mental health part.
Yes.
You say one or more of the safe health professionals has asked if you could actually provide that service to our existing student population.
Yes.
And you said you're going through some kind of a dilemma. So your program must be a good program if our safe health professionals are asking. And in today's world, it's pretty important. So what would be the roadblocks for you?
So the roadblocks would be the legal aspect of it. So the kids are going into a contract, and part of that is they have a referral where they have to admit that, yes, I did this. And basically, the contract has to be followed. If it isn't followed, then things get escalated in the juvenile justice system. Well, we're trying to avoid that. We don't want it to go to court. So this is kind of the caveat that if you do this program and you follow all these terms, we're not going to court, and we'll keep you out of the probation, out of the system. So without that piece, we're not sure how that will be successful. But it is something that we are thinking about. I don't know if that will ever come to be because of that piece, but maybe there might be another avenue to kind of give the same type of services without the legal aspect.
And I'm not sure this is for you or for Mr. Stokes, but who is the safe school professionals? Is it just the social workers, or are there other people?
For the record, Richard Stokes, our safe school professionals essentially are the social workers, and so JPO would likely work with whoever is assigned at Carson High School, Pioneer High School, or our middle schools.
So if we didn't get the grant for the social workers, this would be a difficult program to continue.
We would still continue it, but the difficult piece is having that representative from the schools. But I'll tell you, the deans at the schools are awesome too, and sometimes they'll attend with the safe school professionals. But it is important to have that piece as well. So it is wonderful to have those safe school professionals in the school. It's helpful.
And Richard, have you been involved?
I have not at this point. Looking forward to, though.
No, I think we'll certainly be following up on this.
Okay.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
When you talked about, I think it was the Arise program with the younger kids, with these younger kids who have anger management issues. Well, first of all, I think that's great, getting in there and working with these kids early on. Do we have a follow-up program that's part of this, to where you have a kid in kindergarten who has, I don't know if you even go down that low, but is there some kind of follow-up later in the year, a year or two down the road?
So that was the first implementation of that program. So, I mean, we can always work that piece out. So we haven't thought about, the only piece that I can say to kind of keep track of that is if we get a referral for those kids. So the kids that were in that program have not had a referral with our department. So, we know the names of the kids that were in that program, so we'll keep track to see if we see them in the near future. And as far as going down as elementary or kindergarten level, the program is designed for elementary. We'd have to look at their comprehension to really see if it will work. But we can, I think, go down. I'm just not sure about kindergarten.
No, I got you. And one of the reasons I bring that up is, as Ron kind of alluded to, we live in an interesting society today where, unfortunately, when bad things happen, all of a sudden what you start hearing about is what's been transpiring over the course of these kids' academic lives. And it's amazing how far back it traces. And a lot of these kids, my wife's a kindergarten school teacher, and some of these kids have some pretty disheartening stories at that age already, and I think trying to get to them as early as we can
Absolutely.
really is critical, and then that follow-up piece, just to make sure they're staying on track and not going sideways.
And I think that's a piece, working with the schools. They know the kids and how their behavior is, and so that communication piece, I think, is really important, and I think we have a good communication with the schools. And our probation officer has been working with the principal at Seeliger, so I think that communication is going to continue into next year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say, every year, the number of challenging students seems to grow in our schools. And so I've worked with both of you, and I know that the schools appreciate that partnership, because some of these things are really difficult for a school administrator or a classroom teacher to deal with, because some of these behaviors start to cross the line sometimes. And so I think that partnership is key. So thank you for that involvement in our schools.
Thank you.
Hello, Ryan Felix for the record. I'd just like to start off by addressing President Ron. I'd like to express our gratitude, my gratitude for your opening remarks today about the board's support and advocacy for the arts. We at Carson Juvenile Service wholeheartedly agree with you, which is why I'd like to just let you know that we've joined in a partnership with the Brewery Arts Center to bring the arts into detention, which has created a safer, secure facility and really got the kids to see that other reality that you're talking about, other realm of possibility. So thank you for your opening remarks. With that being said, we have a great partnership with Pioneer High School, and we have currently a full-time teacher that is designated, assigned to our detention facility. He's there 4.75 hours during the summer, and we currently have 2 summer sessions, so we can keep those kids earning credits and kind of staying on track while they're temporarily removed from the community. During the regular school year, we have the teacher assigned to us for 6 hours a day. The program that we use is Grad Point, and it's an online learning. It's age and grade-based program. So the youth are often spending about 4.5 hours of their day online and completing credits. In addition to that, we work into their school day PE, physical education, and they get PE 45 minutes a day. So just some stats for you guys. Last year, for the school year 2017-2018, we served 131 youth in detention. And of those youth, we had 70 credits earned. And Linda had talked about Play by the Rules. Play by the Rules is a phenomenal program that we've kind of inserted into our daily school program for the youth. It's basically a 72-page book that covers Nevada laws, everything from the juvenile court system to misdemeanor charges to felony charges to alcohol and drug arrests to, it runs the gamut. It covers over 200 laws, and that's facilitated by Ron Rhodes, our teacher assigned to us from Pioneer High School. And with that program, during the last year, we've had 5 students begin and complete the entire program. So we've recognized them with a party and with certificates of their accomplishment. Let's see. That's it.
So of those 131 students that you've had in detention, do you have a number of how many of those kids are dropped out of school? So I'm just wondering if there's a correlation between kids that aren't attending school regularly being incarcerated or those that are.
I do not have a number for that. Yeah.
And Jason, you want to add some comments here?
Jason Zona for the record. When I started the journey working with juvenile detention, we didn't have all of those levels of support, or the students didn't have that, so kudos to you all. Throughout the years, they keep adding more layers for our students. What my role really is supervising Ron Rhodes and making sure that we have curriculum there for students to continue their education. What that used to look like in 2007 was kids would go in to juvenile detention for any number of days, and they would get packet work from teachers at whatever site. And sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. And we didn't really have kids throughout the years earning any credits. They would go in, get interrupted, go back into the school, try to catch up. So it was a real challenge. Then we moved to online, and we started with the online at Pioneer. We also used that over at Juvie. So now what can happen is a student can be an online on any course that they need to be on, whether it's middle school to high school, go back into their original site, whether it's Carson High or Pioneer, and continue that class. And so it's not wasted. So we're trying to keep it seamless. So that's been a big deal. We track how many credits are earned every year, and I didn't bring the graph tonight, but we saw that less students are going in and more credits are being earned, which is what we want to see. So with that, the grad point's working very well, and with the grad point, you have all these layers of character building and support, which is really great. So, any questions?
Questions, comment? Well, Allie, you got a great team here. No, I want to thank, but again, like Joe said, we got to thank you. This is, it's maybe it's the same world we live in, but I think it's a little bit different. The kids need more help at an earlier age. And what you're doing is, it's not one and done, you're seeing it all the way through. And that's really important today. So, as school board member, just thank you so very much. Any other comments, board members? Any comments from the audience? Anyway, thank you so very much.
Well, good evening. My name is Tasha Fuson. I'm the principal at Carson High School. So thank you for having us here this evening to talk about accreditation. Jason and I thought it would be a good idea for us to start out just kind of giving you a brief overview of what accreditation is and what advanced ed is. Advanced Ed is currently the global leader in providing continuous improvement and accreditation services to over 32,000 institutions worldwide. So they are our parent company, if you will, that came in and did our accreditation reviews. Accreditation in itself is an international process that schools go through to have an external review team come in and take a look at validating the self-study that we complete within our school. So most schools go through the system or the accreditation process every 5 years. It's a 5-year cycle, and it starts with really a self-study done by the school. So in both of our situations, both at Pioneer and Carson High School, that started with surveying our parents, actually twice. We had to do an interest inventory and then a survey about the school community itself. We had to survey our students on those two batteries as well, and then our staff. You take a look at that feedback, and then you complete a review, I guess, of what they call the school quality factors, which is a set of standards that are set by Advanced Ed. And then in addition to that, we take a look at all of our school data to see whether or not we are making academic gains in the areas that we've identified as priority areas for our district. And finally, you create a roadmap or an improvement plan based on all of that feedback. So then when the external review team comes in, they look at specifically 3 different areas. They look at leadership capacity, learning capacity, and resource capacity. So those are the 3 main areas. On leadership capacity, they specifically examine institutional purpose and direction, governance and leadership effectiveness, stakeholder engagement, and improvement capacity within the building. Under learning capacity, they take a look at teacher-learner relationships. They look at the quality of curriculum, student performance results, the quality of instruction in the classroom. They look at family and learner engagement and support services for student learning, as well as assessment practices of the institution. And then under that third one, under resource utilization, they specifically focus on allocation and use of resources, support for professional learning for all of our staff, equity of resource distribution to the needs of the students, level and sustainability of the resources we have, and long-range capital and resource planning effectiveness. So it's quite immense. It's very thorough for what they come in and take a look at. Within the external review itself, what that looks like is we have a team of professionals, administrators at sites and within districts in our surrounding area that are trained within the Advanced Ed protocols. So they come in and they spend a day with you, or a day and a half, doing observations in all of your classrooms and looking at all of the information that we put together for them and verifying whether or not what we say is happening within the site is indeed happening. Do we have evidence? So if we say that we're really strong in professional development, do we have evidence and artifacts, and do we have the stakeholder feedback saying that that indeed is what's happening on our institutions? So they again come in and look at the observations, and they come up with what they call an index of quality, index of educational quality, or an IEQ. I'll talk to you a little bit in a moment about what that is. But then within the report, they also identify a powerful practice for each institution. So what is it that you're doing the best? What is your main strength within your institution? Then they also identify if you have opportunities for improvement, and lastly, an improvement priority. That improvement priority, every institution that is inspected or goes through the process has that improvement priority, and you are required to follow up on that within the 2.5-year mark, so the halfway mark between your next time you're evaluated, in terms of what progress you're making towards meeting that or addressing that improvement priority. So in essence, that's that's what that process looks like. Carson High School, we were visited on May 3rd and 4th for our external review visit. It went very well. They actually completed 88 observations on our campus. So what you see on the screen up there is the scores that we earned are under that external review column. And then under the AEN, that is the average score of all of the different institutions that they visit. So every observation at every institution that they've done within the last year, they come up with that average. So there's 7 different domains within the observation tool that they use. What that looks like is they go into a classroom and spend a minimum of 20 minutes observing that classroom. So it is a snapshot of what's happening. It's very difficult. For instance, we try to tell our staff, don't give a test. If you give a test and they come in and they're doing these observations, you're not going to get a very good score back. But they look at that first one is equitable learning environment. So do all students in the classroom have access to resources and access to the teacher, right? And when we talk about equity, it's the same as not always equitable, right? So do the students who have higher needs, do they have the resources that they need to access curriculum in that environment? And as you can see, that's an area that we did fairly well in compared to the average. High expectations has to do with the level of rigor in the classroom. Again, we did fairly well there. Supportive learning environment, that is to what extent that the students have levels of support that they need. It could be, for instance, having a Chromebook and maybe read aloud software on that to help support them in their learning. The fourth one is the active learning environment. We were a little bit lower on this one. What that really is when they went in to see the classrooms, did they see students talking to each other and actually interacting with each other? Wasn't really surprised about that one. We do see a lot of teacher-led instruction going on, and we had identified that as an area already that we need to focus on. The fifth one was progress monitoring and feedback. What that specifically looks at is not necessarily whether or not teachers are giving students feedback, but are students self-evaluating their own work within the classroom, and is there a mechanism for students to monitor their own progress through that curriculum? And you're going to see that come back in our improvement priority. And again, the nice thing is we had identified that already as an area that we wanted to focus on. Number 6 was well-managed learning environment. Again, we did fairly strong on that one. And digital learning environment. The digital learning environment, everyone asks because that's a pretty low number. And just so you know, this is a score of like up to 4 points. If you're exceptional, you're in that 4 range. Digital learning environment, what they looked at specifically is what are the students doing with the technology that they have. So you only get 1 point if kids actually have technology. You get another point if students are using it to do research or something like that. You don't get into the 3 and 4 unless kids are like creating things with it, unique individual things with it, and or if they're using it to like discuss or coordinate with other students. So it's not like Mr. Zona and I could sit here looking at a Chromebook together researching something. We would get a 2 on that or a 1 on that in that environment. So it's kind of it's often misunderstood what that's referring to. So that's what our observation scores were. Then the IEQ itself. So what is an IEQ? It is the impact of teaching and learning on student performance. It's actually the index of education quality overall is what that stands for. But it looks at the impact of teaching and learning on student performance, looks at capacity of leadership to guide and ensure effectiveness in carrying out strategic direction of the institution. It's the utilization of resources to meet the diverse needs of our students, and it's to be used as a tool for formative analysis and condition improvements and connection for the conditions, processes, practices to evidence including student performance. So in essence, it gives you an overall summative score. It says, okay, based on all of these things that we're looking at, based on our observations in your classrooms, based on your self-study, school quality factors, what you've identified as areas of strength, as areas of needs, the amount of evidence that you've provided to really support what you've looked at, then they look at your surveys, and then they also come in and they do a lot of interviews with students, staff, and other parents as well. So then they validate what you got back on your surveys in terms of, is that what our stakeholders are telling the visitors as well. So that's what the IEQ is. We were very happy with this. The IEQ results indicate that the school system is performing within acceptable ranges as compared to expected criteria, as well as other institutions in the network. So in essence, it's 100 to 400 is your overall score. So they rank again, out of all the institutions that they look at within a year period of time, they come up with an average score, and then you can look at your score as it compares to the average. They do change that every single year, so that slides based on, it's not something that they've looked at like 5 years ago and this is the same score. It's dynamic. So overall, Carson High, we were very happy with our score. We scored a 327.21 versus the average score, international score was 285.45. So ultimately, that was validating to come back and say, when they looked at all of the pieces that we put together, that what we said we were doing well in, we were doing well in. So that was a win for us. So our powerful practice, what they came back and told us what our powerful practice was, is the school has a systemic and systematic process for ongoing professional development. So they tell you that, and then I also put, and I'm not going to read it to you, but the next slide actually shows you like the type of evidence that they give you to support that. So in essence, all this feedback that they gave us said is that we had looked at coming up with a very systemic professional development plan. So when we rolled out one-to-one devices to our students, we had an entire year of professional development for our staff on how to integrate those devices in the classroom to support instruction. We also spent a year looking at unwrapping standards, creating common assessments for our students within each of the courses that we teach. By the way, at Carson High, we have 190 courses that we teach. That was quite a daunting activity that we had our teachers go through. And then we specifically this year looked at instructional strategies that teachers could utilize in the classroom to improve engagement. So having that and having our students be able to talk to the impact that the professional development their teachers have had in the classroom and how they're seeing that actually help them in the classroom, those were pieces that they gave us feedback on as being a powerful practice for us. Opportunities for improvement, this did not surprise us as well. So develop a system to improve common grading practices. So within our race to the top work that we've done and really looking at the learner-centered model, one of the challenges the high school has had, both of our high schools, is that, we unwrapped our standards, we created common assessments, and then last year we got new standards for science and had to start the process all over again. This year we have new standards for social studies. We had to start the process all over again. And so we really haven't been able to focus in on with our teachers on what you do with that data so it can actually impact instruction in the classroom. So although we've been very successful in improving our graduation rates and really getting our kids to perform very high in terms of academic rigor, unfortunately, it's because of what Mr. Zona was just talking about earlier, as we do a lot of credit recovery with our students, and we really need to focus on getting it done the first time around instead of catching them with our safety nets. And so that's basically, again, what they saw, which validated what we saw as well. And again, the next one is just the evidence, but I summarized that for you. And then the last part of the feedback that they gave us was our improvement priority. And our improvement priority was to develop a system where instruction is monitored and adjusted on a frequent and ongoing basis to meet individual learner needs and the institution's learning expectations. So again, goes hand in hand with that opportunity for improvement. So we can't it's difficult to ensure that grading practices are matching, or our assessment practices match what our expectations are for students unless we're using that data on a consistent basis. So we're going to focus on that. Some parting remarks that I wanted to share with you that we received from them in our conclusion narrative. I actually put these in quotes because I was very proud of my staff. So it said, Carson High School is commended for striving to meet the needs of diverse student population and help all students see the potential for future success. Interviews, artifacts, and presentations detailed the number of formal structures in place to guide students to college that don't typically see college as an avenue to success. That was one. The next one, they commended our continuous effort to improve instruction for all learners. It's evident in the goals and closing the achievement gap, offering high-quality support services, and increasing staff capacity through collaboration and focused professional development. So we revised our core beliefs and to meet the needs of our students. So we incorporated SEL, a belief statement within our overall mission and belief statements. So they commended that. And 100% of our students that they interviewed said every day is a good day at Carson High. So that made me very happy. And last but not least, and this was a good one about families, our parents and students commented on the number of caring staff who pay attention to their children and their concerns. The parents and students felt that helpful adults at the school increased the student success. It was also supported by observations and advanced ed parent and student surveys. There was consensus that they said that, not me, but I said my leadership team cares about the school and has added many programs and activities to help students be successful. So they also consistently spoke of lack of bullying on campus, attributing it to the positive culture and overall caring and support of the staff. So that was really, really validating for my team in terms of working with our Safe Schools professionals. I want to bring them up again. I heard them mentioned before, but how valuable they have been to the school, and also the social emotional learning programs that we have going on throughout our district. My team itself, they feel often, they're like, I don't think teachers sometimes take it seriously. I don't think students sometimes take it seriously, and I was able to go back to that team and say, you know what? It's making a difference. Everything you guys do every day, all the little things, all the stuff that people are working so hard on, we're seeing it from our parents, our parents are seeing it, which means their kids are seeing it, and the surveys are coming back on a very positive manner to say that the climate at the school is supportive and helpful and encouraging to their kids. So those were our celebrations from our accreditation. And now it's Jason's turn.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Just, and this will probably answer for both schools, I would guess, but when they come into the schools, the advanced ed folks, how does it work? How many folks are coming in? How many classes are being evaluated or observed?
So, Jason has a slide that actually shows his folks. I didn't bring that, but we had a team of 7 folks that came in. They observed 88 classes. There is a threshold. They have to observe 90% of your overall classes. So when they came in during the time frame, that, for instance, if we had a substitute teacher on campus, we didn't send them to that class. Didn't feel it would be fair to the substitute teacher, to have an external observer in there when they hadn't been prepped on it. But yeah, so it's a significant number of folks that come in, and then I've been on several teams myself. So you, as an as a external review team member, you usually take one of those areas, like leadership capacity or resource utilization, and then they team up to be the focus team on that particular standard. And then they get together as a whole group and powwow and make sure that they all had the same information or the same ideas about what they saw. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to speak to when you were saying that, we have to do a better job at catching kids the first time through. And I think that one of the things I want to, which I know is in public school, we take these kids as they are and we help them improve. And so I think in the perfect world, we would catch everybody that first time through. But I think it's great that you have that security net, because for the kids that need that second chance for credit, you guys are changing their life. So, it might not look good on those results, but what you're doing is making an impact, and I think that's pretty phenomenal.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you.
I just have a comment. This is something to be proud of, and I know we're concerned about growth, but how is this being marketed? Because you know what? This doesn't happen everywhere, and not a lot of schools in our area can boast this same sort of accreditation report. So I just put that out there. It's something to be proud of and something to put out in the atmosphere here for others to hear.
And that's why we have a public information officer now. But I would like to thank Tasha for bringing up our PD days, because we do get asked a lot as a board of why do we have so many and why are they important, and I think you summed that up very well, and I appreciate you bringing that up tonight.
And
I think that going to Karen's point, that this is information that needs to go out, like to the economic development agencies, because I can tell you that one of the very first questions that we get asked when an employer comes to town is about schools. And we spend a lot of time explaining, and maybe this is my personal opinion, that Carson City has the best school district in the state. And that we really have the programming in place and the numbers to back that up. So if we have more information that we can provide, say, to NNDA, WDD, so that when people are contacting them to look at this area with site selectors, that we can provide this information just to back up when I'm out there. I'm not on an island.
And maybe, Mr. Stokes, maybe you could have Dan work on just a short fact sheet that says that are quick sheets that people could say, this is what we're doing here. We have Jumpstart, we have all these other programs, but just a one-page sheet that he could work on so that we could give those out at those kind of meetings.
Well, and I think that it's also huge to point out how large Carson High School really is in comparison to other schools in the state. I mean, so a report like that with such a large school, I mean, without good leadership, that school could get away from the community, really.
And to Karen and Brad, that's why the growth, why people want to come to Carson is so important. Because 3% growth rate, but if suddenly people come in, whether commercial, they're bringing families, because they want to be part of this as part of the Carson City School District for their kids. That's why we need to be really in touch. So let's say 3%, but we may have been at 1%. It could suddenly jump to 3%. That has an impact on facilities. So anyway, you make good points. Once the word's out, this is, well.
You want to take it back?
Jason, have a good time after Tasha.
Actually, I have to say, you're going to be really happy with his results as well, because he kind of knocked it out of the park, too.
Jason Zona for the record. We also went through this process along with Carson High at the same time. The people that really came out, I wanted to thank them for spending their time with us. They're outside the district. We had Carrie Pomeranian from Lyon County. She was a lead evaluator. We had Marty Swisher from Aspire in Douglas County, and Kim Cuevas from Washoe County. So it was nice to have folks from different districts come out and see what we're doing. On the next slide, each school should have their own accreditation team that kind of take the reins, and so we had a math teacher, an English teacher, and counselor as a part of that. We had Carrie Jordan, Rebecca Allen, and Ray Sarmiento. And then our weekly team also would focus on this all throughout the year. So it really wasn't just that day visitation. We were preparing for that visit the entire year with documents being uploaded, and they had a lot of information before they stepped on the campus. And as you can see, that team, we had the social worker as part of that team, we had the counselor, special ed, teacher, every aspect of the staff was on that team. So that's a real professional photograph. That's one of our things we do every year with our staff. We go outside, we work on team building, and those are the people, as the rest of our staff, that were responsible for these results. The overview, you can read that through your packet. It kind of explains exactly who's on the staff and how we get this done, how many of each type of staff are on there. We were going through this process, we were surprised to see that 60% of our staff had a master's degree plus, and 60% were at our school for 4 years or more. So that consistency, if you have the right people, is a very good thing. Once you get the right team in place, you want to keep them there. You want to make sure you retain the best and the highest quality employees. And I know that master's degree folks, when you hire them, are expensive. So when I interview someone with 10 years experience and a master's degree, it pays off. We have some brand new teachers doing very well too, but that experience really, really helps. Tasha talked about the areas they looked into, so the next slide will show you the major 3 that we were graded on. And the first one, that we collect sufficient quality data, we met expectations on. The second one as well, using strategic goals, the curriculum was in place. And then the third area we exceeded in was the capacity to implement continuous improvement with our staff. They have pieces of evidence for each one of these, so I'm not going to read through all of it, but every time they made a statement, they had pieces of things for us to look through and dissect for next year and what to focus on. On the next slide, some of those included that we reach out, we look at student goals, we're commended for the variable trend data that we look at. We had 19 different surveys last year. It was a lot. It was unusual, but it did reiterate what we were doing, and we could see areas that we needed to grow in, and a lot of those data points converged, so we saw what we needed to do. This is the area they wanted us to recognize as a powerful practice, and we'll just move on. That's their evidence. Every time they would pick up some of the data, they would go interview the teachers, and they would see if their data was correct, and they interviewed students, parents, staff, and every slide you're going to have a little bit of that. Opportunity for improvement. They wanted our teachers to look at monitoring and adjusting for instruction. I think with our work with the Master Connect coming up, we're going to be able to really do that and see how kids are doing and what we need to adjust. The other priority was developing a plan for services beyond graduation. So what we learned from that is we were not articulate enough in our JAG program. We're the only alt-ed school with JAG, and that's all about connecting students to jobs after graduation. So when I read that, I just thought, well, we did not brag enough about JAG. The other place we do that is a CTE. We have a program where kids are getting hired at medical centers, Carson Tahoe, renowned, right out of high school. So we need to communicate that more, like you were saying, and brag about it. Our total score, the network average, like Tasha was talking about, 282.45 was the average, and we scored a 315.94. We're very proud of that. So that goes back to the staff. It really is, it's a team effort. It's the support we have for curriculum. All those factors are going into that. They had a lot in the narrative. So here in the bullet number 2, they did talk about JAG, so they recognized we had that. Project Discovery is how we work on our staff dynamics. We also take students off campus and we work on behavior and interaction. So we have a few of those. On the next slide, we have, it just keeps going on with different evidence that they have. The one that it stuck out to me, that the parents felt that their students were being helped out and that the lack of bullying, that was good to see that, because we really don't always know. We wonder if kids aren't reporting it, which they probably 100% of the time are not doing that, but it was good to see that their data was also pointing out it was a safe environment. So our next steps, they wanted us to share with stakeholders, so that's what we're doing today. And all the staff has this report. Our next step is to send a letter out to parents, and then next year we're going to sit down as a staff, look at where we're strong, and work on the things we need to work on. And celebrate, that was one of their pieces of advice. So in conclusion, this photograph stuck out to me. We were going through our slides of the last couple years of staff, and this one really struck a chord, because in this event, we had to get the whole staff on this platform. It's about a 6-inch girder and one platform, and your entire staff has to get on. And if you hit the ground on one side, getting all your staff on, you have to get off and do it again. So in this particular problem, our staff, they were able to get on without touching the ground. We had 2 folks on either side as governors, making sure the system wouldn't fail, and we got them on in record-breaking time. The guy that was in charge said he works with Fortune 500 companies, SWAT teams, you name it. He has never seen a group do it so quickly, and he wanted to know how we did that. We have to be creative at Pioneer, and so we have a very creative staff, and we have to put systems in place that don't let kids fail. It's okay to fail and keep on going, but we don't always have the time to do 4 years with a student. We get them at 2 years or 1 year. So we have to do it right the first time. Like Tasha was saying, we have to use our creativity. We have to put systems in place that don't let them fail, don't let them drop out. And so that really stuck out, and we have to focus our efforts on what's important. So we did that as a staff outside, and we have to do it inside the school, and that's our focus every year. So I know that's the creative, wishy-washy stuff, but it kind of sums it up in a photograph.
Well, Tash and Jason, I mean, this is amazing. And for the board member, this is the first time I could hear this, I think all of us. And, I guess we can't thank you enough, and this, just our community, for paying or taking the time to work with all the students. And it takes somebody in the leadership roles, and you two have rose to the top. I don't know, comments from the, yes, Joe.
And I said it before, I look at what we're doing in our schools, and I'm sure a lot of schools are doing a lot of the same things. When I just look back over my life, from when I was a high school student to the high school students now, it's really night and day. It was very easy when I was in high school, and I'm sure a lot of you, to just get lost in the shuffle. You just kind of kept your head down. If you might not have been the best, but as long as you weren't the worst, you just hit out in the middle and just did what you had to do and moved on. And kids now, they're very accepting of each other. I think the support mechanisms that are in the school, all these things combined are just amazing. I mean, when I walk through the schools and I see the different types of kids communicating and talking to each other, that kind of stuff didn't happen a long time ago. And I think in our district, we really do an exceptional job of bringing everybody together, and they really are their own team as well. I mean, you talk about your team of administrators, and they're doing a great job, but these kids really have found a way to become a team themselves. And I know for my kids, I look at all their friends and all the activities they're in, and it's not back in the day where you had the athletic kids, you had the, for lack of a better term, the nerdy kids, and all these different kids that hung out. They all hang out, they all communicate, and they're all working together. And I think, whatever we're doing as a school district and in the two high schools, it's really working well, and congratulations to you and your staff, because there really is a high number of kids working together. So, thank you.
I would actually like to thank all of you, and I know Jason would agree with me on this, you guys know this is the third district I've worked with in this state, and I have never had the support and the resources in any other place that I've worked that we have here. I think as a community, as a board, as the district office leadership, we really put forth the effort and the work that it needs to happen in order to provide the supports and the resources so that we can offer those programs for our kids. And I know our kids are proud to be Carson High students. They're proud to be Pioneer students. They're proud to be from Carson City itself, and our families are proud of that. And it's nice to see everyone. I think it takes a village, and that's going back to, Rich had actually said that at a board meeting earlier this year, that it takes a village, and I think people forget that it really does. So I personally, in my position, feel very fortunate for the support that I have in our community and in our district, so thank you.
Just want to add something real quick. This is my 18th year as an administrator, 11 as a principal. I've never had another school administrator I've worked with like Tasha, so I really appreciate what she's done. It's not a competition between the two schools like other districts you might see. There's a lot of teamwork. Our teachers go to their site, they work together, and all of our kids win. And that's, out of all the years I've worked, it's been the best partnership I've ever seen, so I really appreciate her leadership on that. So thank you.
I was just going to say to Tasha and Jason and your school board here and all the schools, the school district, that's a wonderful report card. It's just, that kind of information, one is from a community standpoint, it's terribly important. And I think, what Supervisor Brankowski was saying is also important, that people want to know what's going on in their school district. And that's one of the reasons why we do these joint meetings, so we get to hear these things and get to, spread whatever word or coordinate whatever activities we need to do. But let me just say, that's a wonderful report card. Makes us all proud.
And I just wanted to add that Jason's been very good at inviting me to the school, being their representative, and the school staff has been incredible when I'm there. And it always used to bother me when I first got on the school board because they always thought Pioneer was the school that all the bad kids went to. But it's a totally different environment. It's not that. It's an alternative for those kids that can't fit into that 2,100 member school. And the teachers there are, like you said, so creative, and I've never heard so many kudos in speeches at graduation for the office staff. For those two girls, or women, those two women were in every single one of those speeches. And it was just really, those are the first people that the people see, but you could tell that they almost called them their second moms. And for them to make sure that they got to school every day and that they were fed and they felt part of it. So I'm really glad that we're getting to the point where I think people are thinking that Pioneer is a real school, a real high school, and gives a lot of advantages to a lot of people. I mean, there was a junior Olympic skier that graduated from there. We have people that go into the Army. You had double-digit Millennium Scholarship people, not including the Jump Start credits, and your JAG program is just incredible. So many of those kids have gone. And Mr. Bland's class, those kids are graduating and making $20 an hour. So kudos to you, and I hope that by getting this out that you're more recognized more as our other high school and not where all the bad kids go.
And I think it's worthy to note that his graduation rate was higher than the national average. For an alternative high school, that's unheard of.
And has gone up every year he's been there.
Every gray hair that I've...
Well, again, Tasha and Jason, thank you so very much. But I think we owe some other thank yous to Richard and to Sue for hiring you. I mean, that's got to be worth something, huh? So, thank you.
Mr. President, before we let our principals get away, I was grateful that the question was asked, but Mr. Zona, Mrs. Fuson, would you just briefly tell us your graduation statistics for the most recent class?
Do we have well, I can tell you that we had 467 students cross the stage. We had only 8 students that did not make it to graduation, but the celebration for those 8 students is 5 of them will be returning with us next year. 3 of them are on IEPs, and 2 of them are second language students, just need a little bit more time. And then the other 3 students are already enrolled in and working with Mr. Santillo, again, just needing, because of life circumstances, just a little more time to finish. But so from my calculations, we have 100% of our kids that, given a little bit of extra time, will make it across that stage.
Yeah, we have, it used to be where you would just count, who didn't graduate, and you kind of didn't have a plan years ago for those kids, but like Tasha was saying, that now, even if you don't walk across, there's something you're going to do, and we're going to track you on that. We had 53 were graduating. We had 1 already finished for the summer, and we have another one on track to finish the summer for a total of 55 students. And 2 of those students were juniors. They graduated a year early. And with 9.5 credits you can get next year per year, we were wondering if that would be too much, but we don't usually have that many kids who graduate in 3 years, but we always have a handful. 1 kid was a 5th-year senior, and so like Tasha was saying, that those who did not walk the stage, they're doing summer school right now. I've already talked to one of them's boss, sitting in the audience, and she's going to help me get him to finish up, and we just don't give up on him, so.
I also want to take a moment to brag for Mr. Santillo since he's not here, because my understanding and my number might be a little off, but I believe he had 33 graduates, which I think is an all-time high for adult ed, and 18 of them participated in our graduation ceremony as well. So that's pretty impressive as well.
One more, just a little bit to add to that without dragging this on too much, but when we talked about Carson High School and Pioneers doing some of the same stuff, it's really amazing what we're getting. We had, was it 14 kids that were involved in the EDU 110 course, 15 kids that decided they wanted to see what it would be like to be a teacher, and they pursued that. And so, these kids got college credit doing that. Most of them decided I think they like education and might want to pursue it. I don't know what the number of AP students we have at the high school, but it's a high number. And then this year we had how many Jumpstart kids walk across WNC stage?
We had 15 students who earned their associate's degree 2 weeks before graduation.
And that number just keeps climbing every day. So, I mean, what these two and their teams are doing is just amazing.
It won't be reported that way in the newspaper. I just want you to know. And it's because, the way a cohort graduation works is that any student that may have withdrawn from either one of our schools during their 4 years in high school, if we don't have proof of where that student went. So for instance, last year, we literally had a student who attended Carson High School for 3 days and then withdrew. We didn't get records requests from another school, which makes sense because the student had only been with us for 3 days, so they would have requested records from their previous school. But that student, for instance, will end up counting as a dropout for a student in that case for the high school. So what I can tell you with our 467 students, actually 475 seniors, that's how many seniors we had at the end of the year who were enrolled with us. So unfortunately, again, the data is not as kind when you include some of those other students that along the way we have difficulty tracking. So, but we work on that all summer long, and I think we have until October before we get our preliminary graduation rates, final graduation rates, and then we do also have, unfortunately, with some of our students on individualized education plans, if they have not met the requirements, state requirements for a standard high school diploma, they also count as non-grads for us, even though they may have graduated by meeting their IEP goals. So just so you know, again, it becomes a frustrating thing for principals around the country when your graduation rates are reported, and it might be something like last year we had 92.3, but if you just literally looked at the students at the end of the year who graduated, like in this case, we would be at about a 99%, but it won't be reported that way because of again, some of those students on IEPs and some of those students who along the way, were lost in the tracking system.
Okay. Thank you both very much. That's all good news, and we will celebrate. So, thank you. Okay, agenda item number 9, presentation on the Student Attendance Review Board, SUB, in the Carson City School District to include highlights from several community and city partnerships. Dr. Ricky Medina and Alice Valdez. And while we're waiting for the PowerPoint, I would like to recognize that we have in the audience Mrs. Jessica Daniels, the director of the Carson Montessori School, which I often use as a model school. I can't say enough good things about it. So everything is good.
Yeah, so good evening, and thank you for having us and letting us come to share about what we're doing with truancy and absenteeism in the Carson City School District. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ricky Medina. I'm the Director of Accountability and Assessment, and I have with me Alice Valdez, who's her official title is the Truancy and Dropout Prevention Specialist, but I look at her more, she's like the truancy and absenteeism superhero for our district. And I'll share a little bit more about her in a moment. I'm going to start off, I'm going to give kind of the history of kind of how we got to where we are now, and then I'll let Alice talk about some of the day-to-day happenings in student attendance. So 3 years ago, I was at my daughter, her elementary class, they have like a family camping trip towards the end of the year. And I had just been asked by Mr. Stokes and Ms. Kima to take on truancy and attendance for our school district. So I'm sitting there at the table with my wife, and I'm excited, and I'm telling her what I'm going to do. And she looks at me and she says, I think Mr. Stokes and Ms. Kima don't like you as much as you think you do. and I took that But we were at the table, and we had some friends that we had gone to school with, and they were really close friends, but we hadn't seen each other for years. Like, we knew each other before we had kids, and then our kids ended up in the same class. And I knew that she worked for Washoe County, so I asked her, could you hook me up with whoever does attendance in your school district? And she got this big smile on her face, and she was like, well, that's my husband, let me call him over. So she calls him over, and I told him what I'm going to be doing. And he looks at me and he says, the people at your district office must really not like you. And so that's how the summer started. Luckily for me, there were 4 things that happened that kind of changed the trajectory of where I was headed. The first one was that Washoe and Douglas County, their school districts pulled me in and took me under their wings and said, these are some things that we're doing in our district. These are the things that have worked really well. These are the things that have been absolute disasters that you want to avoid. This is our process. Feel free to take whatever documents we have or whatever processes that we're using and implement them in your district. The thing is that those 2 districts, their legal departments interpreted things totally different ways. The NRS around attendance is sometimes it's vague, sometimes it's contradictory. So I was left with all these wonderful ideas, but really didn't have a sense of where I was going. Fortunately for me, I came back and I was able to hook up with Buffy Akuma from the district attorney's office. And she really, I guess you could just say she took care of our district. She walked us through this is what the NRS says and doesn't say. These are some of the things that you might want to consider. This is the way you want to maybe look at setting up your attendance practices and your truancy practices. So that was the second big thing that got us going in the right direction. The third thing was she hooked us up with, I have some of the folks listed up there on my PowerPoint that joined in this process so that I wish I could say I was the one that was the catalyst for where we're at now, but it's really the folks that are up there on the board. So we had folks from the Ron Woods Community Center that came in and offered, these are the programs and supports that we could do for kids. We had folks from juvenile probation that came in and said, these are some of the things you could do with kids that are in our program. These are some things that are available for kids that aren't in our program. And they were willing to work together with us. The sheriff's office, through our student resource officers, were really supportive of and gave input to what we were going to do for attendance and truancy, as well as our student support services, which handles students that require special education services or that they have a better understanding of mental health issues than, say, myself, as well as our English language learner department. And so that was the third big thing that happened. The fourth big thing was we were able to hire a truancy and dropout prevention specialist. And for our district, I think it was one of the best hires that we've made. So Alice, she has a law enforcement background, and which makes me feel better when she's out in the community because I know that she's safe and she could take care of herself. But she also has a strong sense of caring for kids and people. And I think that I could say that for everybody that's helped with our board. They bring their professional expertise, but they also have a sense, they care about kids as much as educators do or as much as I do, which I think is really crucial. Could you go to the next slide? So what are challenges with truancy and dropout prevention is, I was talking with a colleague today, and she was talking about her time in the Air Force. And she said, going through the Air Force, it was very hard, it was challenging, but at the same time, they set it up in such a way that you had to succeed, that there was no way to fail in the Air Force. And I look at our student-centered model here in Carson City, that's what we're doing with our kids. So I have up there on my slide that we're going to, if kids come to school, we're going to make them graduate college and career ready. With a lot of them, we're going to help them because they're already on that track. But for those other kids, if they're in school, we're going to make them get over that finish line. So for truancy and absenteeism, there's kind of two big metrics or tasks that we look at. The first one is this concept called chronic absenteeism. And you'll hear a lot more about chronic absenteeism in the future. It's every 2 years we have to provide the Office for Civil Rights every morsel of data on kids in our district that you could imagine. And one of the things that they do with that data is they go through and they look for trends. They look at ways that we could help kids. And one of the big things that they've identified is this thing called chronic absenteeism. And it's if a kid misses 10% or more of the school year, their chances of being proficient readers in third grade, those chances drop. Their chances of being in algebra in the 8th grade substantially drop. Their chances of graduating, they kind of almost have no chance of graduating. And another way you could think about that is if you miss 10% of the school year, by the time you get to high school, you've already missed a full year of school. And nationwide, this is a huge issue. Statewide, when we switch to the new star rating system that comes out for high schools in a few months, when they looked at the chronic absenteeism metric, we started off, the state set a goal. They thought that like 3% to 7% of kids in the state would be chronically absent. When we ran the data for all the schools, it went from like 4% to like 63% of kids being chronically absent within high schools. In our high schools, as a district last year, our percentage was about 10%. Those numbers will likely increase this year because they're changing the way that they calculate it. So when I look at 10%, it's horrible, but it's not as horrible as it is in some places. So that's our one of our tasks is dealing with chronic absenteeism. The second one is dealing with truancy. And truancy are kids that refuse to come to school. So the parents want them at school, their teachers want them at school, and the kid just says, no, I'm not going. And so for those kids, we've set up our student attendance review board with those members from the previous slide. And when I first started, I think a lot of folks, the direction of some of us in the district was we're going to punish these kids into coming back to school. So the student attendance review board, we have the power we could issue citations or we could assign 8 hours of community service. And I think that some of us thought that we were going to do that and we were just going to keep issuing citations and kids were going to change their attitude and turn around and show up for school. And what we found is that usually it doesn't happen that way. If I'm going to give you a fine, but you haven't eaten for 3 days, you don't have money to pay that fine anyways. So oftentimes when we get to those meetings, I think the direction changed. It was like we recognized that we needed to be providing interventions for these kids. We need to dig deeper and do some research, find out why it is that they're not attending, why is it that they're being truant from school, and figuring out with some kind of ideas to fix that. And so then I'll let Alice kind of talk about what the kind of day-to-day looks like.
Hi, everyone. I'm in truancy and dropout prevention. For the entire district. So I'm working with elementary school children to high school students. And what we do is we look at the data each day for all the schools who's chronically absent. That means out for medical reasons, out because parents are taking them on vacation, various reasons, but they become chronically absent and we key into those students. So what do we do when we identify these children? First of all, I reach out to the parents, and there's usually root causes. So we look a little deeper. It isn't just the children that are not wanting to come to school. There's deeper issues. And so I do a lot of home visits. I spend a lot of time in my car and on the road and in folks' homes. So I'm the eyes and the ears of the teachers, many times, and the administrators. And many times I find when I walk in the door, I see, I hear, I smell. We identify needs for food, shelter, medical aid, maybe some counseling. So again, deeper issues. And that's where the partnerships in our area come into place. I often counsel students one-on-one at the schools and often pick them up at home. When they're refusing, we talk. And sometimes a little threat of bringing them to school in their pajamas makes them, want to come to school right away with me. But it's gaining the trust of the students and the parents that I found really important and helpful. But we're learning that there's domestic issues, trauma. A lot of times I'm dealing with a crisis situation of children that are possibly going to attempt suicide, and drug issues. But once those are identified, we reach out to the community, we reach out to our SSPs. So we have a community and we do a triage. So great group of people. Juvenile probation, we're working very closely with them. The Student Attendance Review Board, as Ricky mentioned, it is a great group of professionals who do care about these students. And it isn't just, hey, they're at our wit's end, let's penalize them. We've used this Student Attendance Review Board as another intervention with this group of professionals, and we often refer to juvenile probation, and they get into sometimes the JAS program. Sometimes we refer for parents who need to go to the parent project. So many times a SARB board is just not a penalty. We're using it for interventions, a lot of times for parents who don't want to get their children into services, counseling or medical. It's just a way to get them into that. By NRS, SARB can issue citations, and sometimes we do. So they have to stand in front of a judge, and often it's the judge's choice on what to do with that. Maybe he or she will issue community service or a monetary fine. But it's often a last resort. And then some of the challenges, again, that I see out there, again, aren't just kids refusing to go to school. It's mental health issues, domestic issues, a lot of cultural barriers, poverty, drug issues, and a lack of stable housing. I visit a lot of our hotels, a lot of children in hotels that are in transition. And we're working with our district attorneys because it's difficult to issue citations to parents who prevent students from continued truancy. If you can imagine, there are parents out there that for various reasons, sometimes they keep them home to babysit other children. Sometimes they keep them home to keep them company. So on those, we might move forward, and we're hoping to work with our DA to maybe start issuing citations to parents. And I'd like to bring, again, it takes a village. So if our community awareness, and that's meaning businesses. When you think of what should that mean to me, I don't have a student in school, that's going to be your future employee. That's going to be our future. So if we help them to become successful, we're all in a better position. So I'm hoping to work really closely with our businesses this year. And so some employers are unaware or unsupportive of the need for students to attend school. I make a lot of visits to local companies who end up working really well with me because we make them aware of NRSs. These children need to be in school before they're working. So we have some good relationships out there with our local businesses.
And so then our last slide is kind of it's not showing up there, but it's kind of a model.
It comes up slowly.
Yeah. So this is the model that we've taken. AttendanceWorks.org is a kind of a clearinghouse for everything about attendance and truancy. And one of the things that they have on there is kind of materials that kind of outline what it takes to have a successful truancy and attendance program. And we've kind of been working along that process. So when we talk about actionable data, we've been working as a district, we've been working with the state to build kind of reports so that teachers have access to chronic absenteeism on a daily basis. so that they don't have to go through and pull up an individual kid to see kind of what attendance issues that they're having, that they're able to see all of the data kind of all at once and put it in a useful format. We've also been working to kind of build capacity of internally as well as externally. So we've been working, we have our parent liaisons at the elementary level. We have our school support professionals. We have, at Pioneer, they have an attendance and truancy person. So we've been working to kind of build the capacity of all those individuals, so we're working together as a team. And one of our goals for next year is to kind of reach out and build some of those community partnerships. And when you think about it, if you think about like all the times when you're out and about during school hours and you see kids out and they're school-age kids that should probably be in school. So our plan is to kind of build some awareness with the business community, maybe get some posters up, maybe if the same kid's coming to your establishment every day during school hours, maybe at some point you ask them, hey, how come you're not in school? And working on kind of that positive messaging of, we have all these great programs at the high school. We talked about the Jump Start program. We have our CTE pathways. And I think if we could start telling kids even earlier and letting parents know, if you get your kids to school, these are the things, they could graduate with an AA degree. They could do these things, but you got to get them here so that we can be successful with them. And then with that, we'll open it up to questions.
I'd like to add just one of my success stories, our success stories, and that was a student at one of the high schools, and he was just really defiant, and I thought, if you bet, I would take a bet, I wouldn't see this student graduate. But I met with him, and I heard about his stories about his grandfather who was in the military. And being creative in this position, which I've learned to do, is be very creative, that message, and I wanted to give him something to tie him to school. So I reached out to a recruiter, a military recruiter, and I surprised him. They brought him out of class, and this recruiter met with him. He's graduated from the high school, and he's off to boot camp. So with that, giving him something to look forward to, something that excites them. And then for this student, it happened to be the military. Maybe not college immediately, and maybe he will go into some type of schooling through the military, but several of those situations where we're a little more creative and thinking outside the box, one's been pretty successful.
Questions, comments?
Is the 10% district-wide or school-wide? And the next question on that is, what does the 10% translate into in terms of numbers of kids?
Yeah, so for your first question, the new way that we're going to be doing it is that if a kid enrolls in a school for 10 days within the school year, they get counted as part of the population. So if a kid was here for 10 days and they missed one of those days, they would be considered chronically absent. Or if a kid was here for the full year, the full 180 days, if they missed 18 or more days, they'd be considered chronically absent. And the way that they define absent is if it's 50% or more of the school day. So for our elementary kiddos, they have the first period is the first half of the school day. The second period is the second half. If a kid gets pulled out and they miss that full half of the day, they're considered absent for that day. And so if you took our number at the high school is about 10%. If you took that number district-wide, 7,700 kids, that would be 770.
Questions? Comments?
Mr. President, if I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the combined boards, I just want to go on record saying how much I love Ricky and Alice. Truly, you can see by this presentation how valuable this is to our organization and how it just goes in lockstep with what we're trying to accomplish by making sure we are providing equitable access to education for all of our students. Couldn't have picked a better team. Thank you, folks, for all you're doing for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Seeing none, Ricky, Alice, thank you very much for what you're doing. It's a tremendous difference now. Thank you. Agenda item number 10. It's time for public comment. And don't all rush forward, but if any of you would like to make a comment to get on the record, please feel free to come up to the table and press the mic. Well, and seeing none, before I call for adjournment, I just again like to thank.
You guys think, yeah.
What's that?
I mean, thank you, folks. This has been a
Well,
informative meeting.
But as a board, when we started this, 6-7 years ago, I mean, this was a turnaround for our students, and because we all cared, and it continues. And Karen, this will be our last joint meeting together, but we're still going to be around town. But this has been an exceptional. I'll cherish every moment of this, going forward. So. With that, any comments, closing comments?
Just that with having both of you leaving, that we appreciate your service and everything that you guys have done during your tenures as Board of Supervisors and as our school board members. And Karen, you've been totally involved with the schools, especially with the greenhouse project and our egg, right? And we're not losing you there. So our egg program is probably one of the strongest ones in the state because of it. So I want to take this opportunity to thank both of you for your services, and Ryan too. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but we do appreciate your guys' service to our boards.
I just want to say, this is agenda item number 36 for us today. However, this was invaluable. I really appreciate everything that was brought to us because it informs our thought process as well going forward. Thank you.
Okay, now, without objection, seeing none, we are adjourned.